You know, we always say help is on the way, but help don't get here.
Listen, this is not government. This is religion here.
Lord have mercy.
This building is a piece of garbage.
Ain't nobody happy just to be in here. We in here trying to do work.
It ain't right, it ain't right.
I don't see this moving Alabama forward.
As Rick and Bobby say, if you ain't first, you're last. If it ain't
This, boy.
Don't think we
Break it.
break it
I'll
down.
break it with you.
How do we break it down even more?
Everybody's thinking they're doing the right thing. This is not the right thing to do.
I want this fixed today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of If It Ain't Fixed, Don't Break It. I'm Zephyr Scalzetti.
I'm Faye Hobbs.
And today we are talking about Camp Hill, Part 2. Welcome to Camp Hill. We are going to talk today about gentrification, about a dispute between Dadeville and Camp Hill, about the water and the lawsuit that's come out of that, which has gotten pretty juicy. That's not even me saying it. That's a direct quote from the mayor. He said it's gotten pretty juicy, or this is where the facts get juicy. And we're gonna listen to some audio clips. We're gonna have a good old time. So I know last week was a bit heavy. We will be touching on a couple heavy notes on this episode, not nearly to the same extent that we did in last episode. And just like last episode, we're gonna end on a high note. I really should think of a better phrase than high note, because that feels like I'm stealing from one of my favorite podcasts, Knowledge Fight.
What if we did High Step? Because High Stepper is our top tier of patron.
That's possible. That's very possible. But speaking of our patrons, Faye, could you thank our patrons for making the show possible?
I would be happy to, because we do have several new patrons. At the soapbox level, we have Olino and Kelley Hathcock. At the Floribama Man level, we have James Mayer and Bill Hathcock. And we even have a high stepper this week, Violin Zetti.
So thank you all so much for contributing. If I was able to get the drops done in time, you should hear like a unique drop behind each one. But if you didn't, I will re-thank y'all when I get those drops done. And we'll have like a fun little soundtrack for each level. But thank y'all so much. And so let's get into it.
Gentrification and Lake Martin.
Under every massive public works project in America is a black town that got flooded, demolished, condemned, or otherwise seized. Lake Martin is no different. Hey Faye, have you ever heard of the town of Benson or Coliga?
I have not heard of either of these.
So Lake Martin is a man-made lake. And to be clear, I had never heard of them either. I know that under every massive public works project is usually a black town that got screwed over. So I went looking and I found the town of Benson. So we're back in, what are we, Eastern Alabama, East Central Alabama?
Central Alabama is usually how it's classified, yeah.
Well, Central Alabama is Birmingham.
Well, East Alabama is the name of the hospital, so let's go with East.
So we're in Eastern Alabama. Lake Martin is a really popular lake. We're going to talk about the gentrification of the area. It's a man-made lake. It was created by damming the Tallapoosa River. So in 1926, Alabama Power, who's the people who spearheaded this, and at the time, by the way, that dam, I believe, was the largest dam in the U.S., or one of the largest. So this was a massive project. So in 1926, Alabama Power floods the town of Benson, which was a prosperous black community, and wipes it off the map. Joshua Darren made an excellent short video on the town of Benson that I'll link in the show notes. But in brief, Will Benson incorporated the Coliga, and I'm pronouncing it Coliga. I don't actually know if that's correct, but that's how Joshua pronounced it, and that was the only audio I could find of somebody saying the word. It's spelled Kowaliga. So Will Benson incorporated the Coliga Academic and Industrial Institute in 1897. And I'm using AlabamaHeritage.com as the source for the following. They have a very in-depth blog on the town that's also listed in the show notes.
Over a period of 30 years, hundreds of rural black children from across the area received their schooling at Coliga. At its height, Coliga School and its related Dixie Industrial Company controlled more than 10,000 acres and included a prosperous cotton and vegetable farm, a cotton gin and cottonseed oil mill, a general store, a sawmill, and a turpentine distillery. The community reached its crowning achievement with the construction of the Dixie Line, a standard gauge railroad running 15 miles from the school to Alexander City, where it linked to the central of Georgia. A March 1914 article in the Montgomery Advertiser and an account in the New York Times later that year credit the Dixie Line as the first railroad in the nation conceived, promoted, built, and operated by Negro people. Today, the Dixie Line is also gone. Only a few stretches of raised railbed near its terminus remain.
So to be clear, this is a town that was entirely Black-owned. All the industry, everything was built from the ground up. There was not like a large endowment, or at least not a single endowment. Will Benson's father was formerly enslaved and worked sharecropping and bought the land, or the initial land, and they grew it from there. So at its height, to control 10,000 acres and what is now Lake Martin, and to have their own freaking railroad.
You don't generally hear about just a town making a railroad. Usually you hear about it as being like a major undertaking at the state or even national level.
Well, at the time that was more common because there were much more there were lots of smaller railroads that all connected to bigger ones. So we didn't have like the massive well, I'm flattening railroad history, and please, railroad people are insane. Please don't hate on me. Although if you have more information on this railroad, I would be interested in hearing about it. But don't hate on me for flattening railroad history. I'm not getting into that.
People like trains, and we like to hear from the people who like trains about the trains. It's very cool.
About the specific train I'm talking about.
Yes,
maybe
please.
not the. But to bring it back to this, this is conceived, promoted, built by the people of Caliga and operated by them. And very specifically, the Montgomery Advertiser nowadays, good newspaper. New York Times, I have I have my feelings about the Times as a trans person. These are publications that were not very pro-Black in 1914. So for them to credit them as being, this is the first railroad in the nation that's built and operated by Black folks, that's a really significant achievement. Benson is incorporated in 1897 and then it's destroyed in 1926.
So not even 30 years.
So if you think about the timeline, right, 1897, it's founded 1901, that's when the racist constitution gets put in, right? Things get increasingly harder for them, but 1914, they have this railroad that they're operating, and they survive until 1926. This is in the same era as like the Tuskegee Institute.
World War I's going on, and these guys are like, hey, we're going to make a railroad.
Well, so because they have industry, right? They need to get those things. So at the time, I didn't mean to get this much into it, but they're producing things, right? They've got cotton, vegetable farms. They have they've got a sawmill. So the logs, right now, 280 doesn't exist. It's a backwoods road, and so they're having to physically drive up every time they have a load of logs or anything to Alex City to distribute
Super dangerous.
Exactly.
Super bad time to
and
have.
That's why
put those on a train. Have the train haul it.
Right.
It's
not just like we're going to have a railroad. It's we are an industrial town. We're trying to be a self-sufficient agricultural and industrial town. We need a way to market our goods. So we need to get it to Alexander City. That's the hub where it's going to connect to Georgia because everything runs on trains at this time. Freight, people, everything. So that's what they do. That's why the railroad exists, is to facilitate that.
Caliga was setting up to be a fully self-sufficient, and
there are differing accounts as of whether or not it was fully self-sufficient. But yes, that was the vision of Will Benson in creating and trying to facilitate this community. Coming to the modern day to look at Lake Martin today, this area is a really prosperous area. It's always been fairly popular, but in the last 5 years, the property values and everything have exploded. The nearest cities are going to be Alexander City, which I think their tagline is literally Gateway to Lake Martin.
It's at least what they have posted on some signs.
Right, and then you cross over a bridge over the lake, and then the next two towns are Jackson's Gap and Dadeville. So if you look at 280, right, you're traveling down 280. You have Alexander City, that's the largest city before you get to Auburn. You got Alexander City, you got Jackson's Gap, you have Dadeville, and then Camp Hill. That's where we're going with this, okay? So Camp Hill and Dadeville are only a couple of miles apart. The Dadeville area, I was curious as to what the price changes were in housing, because I know anecdotally that the real estate has been going crazy up there. But I wanted to look. So an analysis of Zillow data shows that in Dadeville specifically, the typical home value is $514,000, which surprised me. And that the 5-year price change in home values it's doubled. So 5 years ago in 2018, you were looking at $175,000 for the same house. So I was curious as to what Zillow was calling Dadeville, because the data for the city of Dadeville and their data, there's a lot of range there. So you've got I'm seeing a lot of listings for like $1 million plus, and then some for like 60,000. I'm like, what is going on here? So what Zillow is describing as the Dadeville area is a lot larger than the city of Dadeville parameters. And the reason that there is those $1 million homes included is because the Dadeville area, quote unquote, is including all of the shoreline along Lake Martin. And this area comes right up to the edge of Camp Hill.
Is it this blue area that's circled here?
Yes.
Okay, so that is not, butts up against the waterway, but that is not a river. That is just saying, okay, so that they are counting all of that as Dadeville.
Right, or the Dadeville area. So that's when I'm saying like the median home price here is $514,000 or typical home value, that entire area. And so to describe this to people who are not looking at this picture that we're looking at, it's sort of like a hamburger bun. So like there's a hamburger bun of like the lake on top. Camp Hill is like the meat in the middle. And then at the bottom it's just kind of in the corner, right? That's Auburn. And Auburn has been growing very quickly. And so between these two gentrifying areas, Camp Hill is squished in the middle. So you have this area that is massively disinvested. The property values are dog shit. And then 10 minutes away, you have $1 million homes.
Financial woes.
Camp Hill is not so affluent. The median household income is $30,000, and that's the household income, to be clear. And most people are not living alone, so this would be a family income of $30,000. I want to talk about what this looks like in practice and some of the financial woes that Camp Hill has gone through. So we're going to talk through some articles from like the early aughts to, I think, 2019, 2020, just to lay out, some of the things that the town has gone through financially. I do want to say that this is not an exhaustive, detailed like list of everything. These are snapshots just so people can have an idea of what the town's ledgers have kind of typically looked like or what they're facing before we talk about the water crisis in current day. From an Alex City article on December 8th, 2000.
Residents of this Tallapoosa County town found they were left holding the bag after the community's 600 garbage cans were repossessed. The town couldn't pay its $50,000 bill, a city council member said, so Waste Management, Inc. took back the trash bins. Collection crews followed their normal routes through the 1,400-resident town and picked up the trash before stacking the cans in a truck. Lifelong resident Wanda Cox, whose 95-gallon cart was wheeled away after lunch, said she would take her garbage to City Hall. "I want some answers," she said. "Upset isn't the word. I'm trying to be a church lady tonight."
Yeah, when I saw the line about I'm trying to be a church. That is, I can picture this interaction in my head.
Oh, yeah. No.
Just very clearly, yeah. So things got real bad in 2019. The Alex City Outlook published a frankly kind of embarrassing article on September 19th of that year, detailing the frustrations of city council members for very understandable reasons.
Members of the Camp Hill Town Council were frustrated by the inability to deal with the town's finances, including the possibility of the water being cut off. So first trash, then the water.
Well, this is 20 years later. So this is in 2019. Trash was in 2000. And there were things in between. Like I skipped right over the IRS and there's stuff.
But point is that they're having trouble with those bare necessities.
Yes,
and that
consistently, yeah.
That's rough. For the past several months, council members have said they are not getting documents related to the town's finances for the council to make decisions. The frustration reached epic proportions as members of the Camp Hill Council received notice over the weekend the town's water would be cut off because the past due balance of $64,000 to the Dadeville Water and Sewer Board if it did not pay $17,000 by Monday and make subsequent payments on the past due balance going forward.
And to be clear, this is happening, that is Monday. They're discussing this, and the Monday they're talking about is the day that they're talking about it. Why is the city of Camp Hill paying Dadeville? It's because they purchase water from Dadeville. This is going to be a big part of the rest of the
Right.
episode. We'll get more into that later and why that's the case.
This is the first I'm hearing of this, Councilmember Linda Caldwell said before Monday's meeting was canceled. I'm seeing they have been contacting us since March. Councilmember Dean Bonner said he knew the town was a little behind on the bill, but not this far. I thought we were a couple weeks behind, Bonner said. This has caught me by surprise.
Yeah, so that bit right there about that Monday meeting being canceled, that's because they failed to reach a quorum, which is the minimum number of elected officials that have to be present to, have a meeting. And I think quorum is not just about elected officials. Like I think like corporate boards probably have quorums too,
Yeah, it's a specific sort of setup in Battlestar Galactica. They operate off of a quorum of 12.
Yeah, you don't want. Wait, is that just like the council?
That's like the head governing body.
Okay, that's not what we mean by this. This is the
This is
minimum
a-
number of people that need to be in the room for there to be a meeting period.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but thank you for bringing sci-fi into this. For reference, or for folks who maybe, first of all, if you missed last episode, why this is part 2. But if you did, I banned Faye from making
Tolkien
further
references.
That's right. I was going to say Star Wars, but that's what you did in the trailer. Anyway, so back to this council meeting. They couldn't reach a quorum because the minimum number of elected officials that had to be present, they didn't meet it. So who was there? So council members Dean Bonner, Linda Caldwell, and Dwayne Blackwell were there, along with the town attorney and the town clerk. Noticeably not present was Mayor Ezell Smith, which is not a great look when you have 17 grand due that day, or the entire town's water is going to get turned off. We are perhaps starting to see why Messiah won the mayor's race despite still being a student, because this is September of 2019 and Messiah wins the runoff, I think October 6, 2020, right? So the following October.
Yeah, this is not a great look. As somebody who's had water shut off before, it's not a good situation. Those reactivation fees are terrible. You don't want to get behind on water, and for the whole town to be that far behind and caught off guard. You would think that there would be multiple people who would have seen this and at least made a note to do something about it, but there was clearly some sort of communication or information gap going on here.
We're going to get into that a little bit more. There are a lot more layers to the situation that we find out because of the lawsuit, but we're going to get into that.
Okay.
According to the same article, the town clerk, Lakeisha Harris, told council members that the $17,000 water payment was already taken care of, along with an additional $5,000 payment. Everybody was very surprised by this because the unapproved minutes, and the reason the minutes are unapproved is because you approve the minutes. That's like one of the first things you do at the next council meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the notes from the September 3rd council meeting, which is the last one they had before this one that didn't happen, it shows that the mayor told the council that they only had $5,000 in the bank, period. So how they magically came up with $17,000 plus the $5,000, the council members are asking the clerk, like, well, where did this come from? Because they can't ask the mayor directly because she's not there. And so when council members asked the town clerk where these funds magically appeared from, she responded, "We had a really good night at court Thursday." Which brings us back to the dependence on fines to keep small towns afloat from part 1.
My face is in my hands right now because...
Well, there's no industry in the town. Like, how
No.
else, right?
Yeah, I just sure wish there was another way, because that something feels kind of gross about that. We pulled a lot of people over for speeding. We're fine.
Yeah, but this is so we're starting to see like these systemic issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
The state is not providing services. Everything falls on the town. White flight leaves the town without a tax base. That leads, yeah. So you're seeing the dominoes, right?
Oh yeah, and the thing about these dominoes is that they are in a spiral, and they keep getting pushed back up and pulled back down again.
Yeah. That's going to be a theme this episode.
Oh boy.
So-
Oh boy.
So unfortunately, the article doesn't end there because Camp Hill was also behind on payments for the refurbishment of the town's water tank to Tank Pro. The company was originally seeking payments of $3,000 a month and cut that to $1,500, but the reduced payments were not being made. And that was for work that was done 2 years prior. Like that's been an ongoing thing as well. However, what money did get spent on was a, quote, new old tractor that the town had somehow purchased in the last 2 weeks, despite the fact that the council had explicitly told Mayor Ezell that they were not approving the purchase of a tractor until they could all compare quotes and discuss at a following meeting. So these folks, they're at a council meeting that isn't actually happening because they don't have a quorum. And that's when they're all finding out that they've gotten told over the weekend that their water's getting cut off. The town clerk is telling them, oh no, that's taken care of. They can't really confirm any of this because they don't have any financial documents to look at to confirm that.
And there's the water tank situation. And somebody bought a new old tractor. So a used tractor that would be new to the purchaser that they already told the mayor no on, but had somehow been purchased.
Right. Now, they didn't say like just flat out no. They were like, we want to
compare quotes. We want to shop around.
Yeah.
We want to make sure this is the best deal that we can get for the town's money, which is all reasonable until the tractor just gets purchased before any of that gets done.
Right. And so, yeah, this is what I meant by like this article kind of, this ain't great.
No.
On top of all of this, according to an audit of the town's financial statements for fiscal year 2017, the town hasn't made payments on bonds used to work on the town's sewage system. That town sewage system, like those bonds and everything, that's from the 90s. It's been so long that actually the sewage system is what desperately needs to be fixed at this point. So the audit states the town owes more than $500,000 in principal and another $1 million in accrued interest due to lack of payment for years. So, and this is before Mayor Ezell.
They owe $1.5 million for this matter alone, and they didn't have $5,000 in the bank. This is just a rough situation.
Right, because it's sewage. You can't not deal with it. And if you remember when we were talking about it like last time, like this is why I was kind of putting us through this is what the town is going through. It's contracting people. This is why I was talking about the white flight, because if you think about the timing, right, they were taking out the bonds in the 90s. The white flight is kind of late 80s, right? So if you look at their financials then, that's a reasonable step to take, right? They have no reason to think that the town's going to continue.
Had those major factors not changed, they might have been able to.
They would have been able to, right? Like they're making those decisions based on the audits then, and so it becomes a death spiral, which anybody who has been poor knows, right? Where you're like, I have to do this, and then you're like, somehow I'm going to have to find the money for it. Like surely things will get better, and then if they don't or they continue to contract, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So. And to be clear, like I said, the sewage work dates back from the 1990s. I don't want this to sound like I'm putting this all on Mayor Ezell. This is by far not on. This is decades and decades, right? And there are systemic issues that is causing this town to be perpetually trying to get on top of things. You know, they're a poor town. So there's also reporting from 2015 about $154,000 owed to the IRS, and that was under a previous mayor, Danny Evans. So this is not a one-person problem. This is not there was a bad council. Like this is decades, right?
This is a confluence of chronic factors that are coming together to really make things, because these are fundamentals. This is water, sewage, trash collection. These are things that lots of towns take for granted because they do flow smoothly, and when that flow stops, it's bad. Water crisis.
So I promise I'm not saying all of that to make the town look bad. It's context for the lawsuit that we're about to talk about. Because when we get into the nitty-gritty in the lawsuit and when I start playing some of the audio clips, I think, Faye, that you may have the same anger reaction I did. But the last piece of context before we dive into it is how Dadeville handled Camp Hill the last time the water bill was late. So again, reminder, Dadeville is the neighboring town. They are more affluent. They are whiter. So Camp Hill is like 90% black. Dadeville is majority white. Dadeville is about 3,000 people. Camp Hill's 1,000. Dadeville that's where everybody goes to shop, right? That's where the high school is. Like these two towns are
that's
highly.
Where the school is. That's where the actual grocery stores are.
Right. Residents of Camp Hill are spending money in Dadeville. Dadeville gets that tax revenue. Camp Hill sees none of it. Problems continue, right? And Camp Hill specifically pays Dadeville for their water. So back on February 9th, 2023, Camp Hill owed $66,000 to Dadeville for water. This is $2,000 more than the bill in 2019 right? And that one had been festering for a while. But we're not at the shutoff point. Like, we're not at a make an emergency payment by Monday kind of deal. It was like, as of February 9th, they were late on this payment, right? Which is why this statement from the Dadeville Utility Superintendent Mike Ingram raised my eyebrows.
According to Ingram, the debt incurred this time exceeds the previous amount from 4 years ago. Several years back, they were behind and got caught up, but they were not as high as these bills are. Technically true, but they're in comparable straits.
Yeah, to your point, technically $66,000 is greater than $64,000, but that's a 3% difference. And it really feels like the town's in an entirely different financial situation than what was going on in 2019. You know, a lot of these old things have been resolved. Now, to be fair to the residents, I know there have been water problems outside of this, in that, like, the water pressure sucks. Sometimes the water is randomly, like, turned off. A lot of that is because if they have to do any work, like if there's a main line burst, they have to turn off the entire town's water supply. They can't isolate it. Right there, it's an old system. It needs investment. Ingram goes on in this article. So again, that's the Dadeville Utility Superintendent.
The worst probably came during October, November of 2022, Ingram said. We started noticing it more. They were keeping everything current, and then it just started getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse. According to Ingram, Camp Hill's water bills in the past typically averaged between $15,000 and $20,000, but in recent months nearly doubled. That is because there are water leaks in the system, because I can promise you their customers don't have that many leaks, he said.
Now this, in retrospect, is very interesting, because the water bills that Camp Hill was getting from Dadeville were a lot higher than nearly doubled. And there are some other shenanigans going on here. So, by the way, Camp Hill got completely current with its water bills by July 11th, 2023.
Let's go Camp Hill. The lawsuit.
So Camp Hill buys its water from Dadeville. We've kind of touched on this briefly a couple of times. So the water comes from Alexander City, ultimately. And Alexander City gets it from the lake and from the Tallapoosa River. So what Alexander City is doing is it's selling to nearby municipalities. The pipes run through Camp Hill. So Dadeville buys from Alexander City and then resells it to Camp Hill. So Camp Hill entered an agreement with the city of Dadeville to purchase water for the town back in 2012. And lately, that agreement is weighing heavily on Camp Hill.
The mayor estimated 40 to 50% of the city's budget currently goes towards water, leaving the town with very little funding for anything else. Our entire budget is about $1.5 million, he cited. Last 3 or 4 months, we've been billed for over $209,000 worth of water. Okay. So, hold on a second here. Because that is so much. Because you can get like a gallon of water at the store for a couple bucks, and that's
less than that. It's about 48 cents a gallon if you're buying it like that wholesale fill up at the front. I also have had my water shut off, and I know this by heart.
So that would be over 400,000 gallons, like, just from...
Oh, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that. So to put this into perspective on an individual level, right? Because we're talking about this on a town level, but there are people who are affected by this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the town of Camp Hill gets billed $209,000, like the town's not just paying that, right? The Camp Hill residents pay the town for the water that they use. Camp Hill then pays Dadeville.
Right.
And so some of the friction between residents and the town council, or like town leadership, up until this lawsuit became public, was that we are paying y'all more and more money. We are paying so much for our water bills, and then our water's getting cut off, or it's threatened to get cut off because you're not paying Dadeville. Like, what is going on?
Yeah, the situation is a little fucky-wucky.
Right. And so to put this in perspective on the individual level, Camp Hill resident Kashka Williams paid $385 this month for water while living in a 1-bedroom apartment. For comparison, her former 3-bedroom home never ran a water bill above $80. Yeah,
like, I'm used to water bills being like double digits. Let's keep going. I need to know more.
Yeah. So Lee Hedgepeth for Inside Climate News analyzed the bills, and as usual, Lee has a fantastic article on this that I will include in the show notes. So Camp Hill is a majority Black community where the median household income is $30,000 a year, like we mentioned before. Dadeville, population 3,000, is about 58% white with a median income just shy of double its neighbor. So I believe it's like $58,000 a year. So can you read about the analysis?
An Inside Climate News analysis of the town's water bills from 2020 to present revealed that Camp Hill residents have paid an average of more than 3 times Dadeville's water rate each month. During one billing period, June 2024, Camp Hill was charged an effective water rate, its total charges divided by the amount of water used, of nearly 8 times that of Dadeville. That month, Camp Hill was charged $46,695 for 4.2 million gallons of water, while Dadeville paid less, $31,877, for a lot more, 22.9 million gallons. Now, that ain't right.
No, it is not. Yep. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Let's
Yeah,
keep going.
Let's keep this ball
keep
rolling.
going. So things hit a breaking point last month. We're recording this on June 25th. So in May, this is where things really get going. So I have wanted to talk about the water crisis as part of Camp Hill for a while, and I'm actually glad that we ended up getting delayed in recording this episode because Mayor Messiah Williams Cole, as a fellow millennial, actually, I don't know, he might be Gen Z. Yeah. Anyway, he took to the internet with receipts. He is also at this point, right, he is now a practicing attorney. He's an assistant district attorney. So he's kind of done playing around.
Let's fucking go.
So we're going to play some
Mayor
clips.
Messiah.
We're going to play some clips from that. So things hit a breaking point last month. Dadeville threatened to cut off the water by May 16th unless Camp Hill paid $125,000 in past due bills. But the bills don't add up. And I will say, like, that was the first I think anybody heard that Camp Hill was behind on water bills again, because I didn't see any like articles from earlier, like from March or April or anything. So I'm going to read a little bit from this, and then I'm going to contextualize where these numbers come from. Alexander City sells to Dadeville, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dadeville buys wholesale from Alexander City, and then of the amount of gallons that they buy from Alexander City, they're splitting between themselves and Camp Hill, right? Their contract says that Camp Hill isn't supposed to use more than 8 million gallons of water a month, and Mayor Williams Cole is going to get into this a little bit more, but basically, you know, it's rare for a town's water usage to drop much. You know, it can always go up.
Generally speaking, people don't need less water. Generally speaking, there's sort of a baseline that folk need to drink and bathe and cook and do all those other things.
And there are seasonal fluctuations in that people are like watering their lawns or, you know, gardening in the summer, and then in the winter if it freezes, which will happen, you know, at least a couple times a year, and our infrastructure cannot withstand freezes, so you will inevitably have pipes breaking.
Yeah.
And then of course when that happens, when anything bursts, they have to shut off the power, the supply to the whole town to then fix that problem. But when you look at these bills, so in January of 2025, Alexander sells to Dadeville 22.47 million gallons. We're just going to round that down, 22 million gallons. Dadeville then sells to Camp Hill 6.68 million gallons. Dadeville pays $35,000 approximately to Alexander City for their 22.4 million gallons. They charge Camp Hill $39,000 for $6.168 million. Camp Hill's fees, like for their water, is subsidizing the entire bill of Dadeville, and they're making money on top of it.
Yeah, just
it gets worse.
They're being charged more for. They're being charged a greater amount for essentially a quarter of the water,
and it keeps going. So, in February, Alexander sells to Dadeville, well, that's what they claim at least. They say that the Dadeville portion of the bill, right, is 16 million gallons. And Dadeville says that they sent to Camp Hill 10.6 million gallons. So for that month, Dadeville's water bill was $25,000. Camp Hill's was $68,000. Now, what's really interesting and weird about this is that Dadeville, again, typically uses 21, 22, 23 million gallons. How did they get to 16 million overnight? And at the same time, Camp Hill's usage almost doubles. And that pattern continues. So March, they go back up to 20.2 million gallons. That's what Dadeville's using.
Mm-hmm.
Camp Hill is at 8 million gallons. That's still kind of high for them, but, you know, okay. maybe there's a leak or something, although there isn't one listed. So March, Dadeville is paying rounding up $32,000 for water. Camp Hill is now paying $52,000 a month for the water, right?
Mm-hmm.
April, $31,000, right? So if you look at Dadeville's costs, right, they're all about in the low 30s, high 20s range. 35,000, 25,000, 31,000, 31,000, 36,000.
They're keeping the price low for their folks and passing the costs along to the Camp Hill folks.
Well, that's certainly what the numbers would say. Now Dadeville is going to claim differently, but these are the facts. This is like, there are water meters. The numbers don't lie, right?
I'm not like a forensic accountant. I can't say for sure, but as a layperson looking at these numbers, just the discrepancies therein, something suspicious is occurring.
Oh, is it? Oh, is it? So, things got a little, okay, I don't want to make a spectacle of this, but like the girls are fighting and the receipts are involved, and I do really love it when you can just like point at somebody and be like, no, you fucked up. You really fucked up here, actually. No, y'all, and then you get angry because you realize what the implications of them fucking up is. So May 16th, right, Dadeville threatens to cut off Camp Hill's water supply. Says that they're behind on, I think, $125,000 bill. And Camp Hill is like, or the council and the mayor is like, all right, that's it. We have had it up to here. And they put out a 4-page statement. They publish this on all of their social medias, and they send it. This is the letter they also sent, to the town. So I'm not going to read the full letter, but in brief, growing up in Camp Hill, and this is from the perspective of Mayor Messiah Williams Cole, but the entire council signs off on this letter. Growing up in Camp Hill, I always had a chip on my shoulder, not from a sense of inferiority, and definitely not rooted in aggression, but grounded in a deep, humbling pride. A pride that I could withstand any type of undeserved dirt put on my name because Camp Hill made me strong. In Camp Hill, we believe in fighting for our right to sovereignty, our right to assemble in peace and love, and most importantly, our right to exist. And this is a pretty crucial part of this story, is Camp Hill's right to exist. Dadeville Water and Sewer is threatening to cut off Camp Hill's water, but the difference lies in the reason why. In March of this year, the town of Camp Hill initiated a water audit due to some questionable bills received from Dadeville. We requested the bills that Alexander City sent to Dadeville and compared them to the ones Dadeville sent to us. So that's what we've kind of been reading from, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to get super into this because Messiah literally talks through all of this, but I'm just kind of giving you the overview. So here's where things get fucky.
Mm-hmm.
Now Camp Hill has the water bills from Alexander City. So they're able to put together those facts that I was just reading to you, right? Because this entire time, they've been operating under the assumption that their water bills are going up, and so is Dadeville's, because Dadeville is passing along the cost from Alexander City to them. That is not what's happening. What is happening is that on October 5th, 2012, they enter into that first contract with Dadeville. This is the one they've been operating under the entire time. Dadeville agreed to sell us water at $2.35 per 1,000 gallons, while buying it from Alexander City at $1.58 per 1,000 gallons. Now, they knew that up front.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, yeah, you have to, the infrastructure to pipe it to us.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
You're buying it wholesale. We're buying it from you at $2.35. Now, the contract states that this sum per 1,000 gallons may be adjusted by the board upward or downward in accordance with the cost of the water to the board, and the board here is the Dadeville board, as purchased from the city of Alexander City. Meaning, if Alexander City's rates go up, they can charge more. So what happened is that May 14th, 2014, Dadeville raised Camp Hill's price to $2.40. So 5-cent raise.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander City, still at $1.58.
Yep.
June 15th, 2017, they raised their price to $3.40 per 1,000 gallons. Alex City, still $1.58.
Yep.
September 14th, 2021, raised Camp Hill's price to $4.40. Alex City, still at $1.58. June 15th, 2022, they raised it to $5.40. And in July 12th, 2024, they raised Camp Hill's price to $6.40. So this is why I said Ingram's statement, for a number of reasons. Why Ingram's statement, the Dadeville utility superintendent, the person who definitely should know, like if he doesn't know, he's incompetent. Of what the rate price is that they're selling it to Camp Hill.
If he doesn't know, he's incompetent. If he does know, he's malicious.
Right. And then to put into context that quote earlier, the worst came probably during October, November 2022. We started noticing it more. They were keeping everything current, and then it just started getting a little bit worse and a little bit worse in terms of getting behind on the bills. And he blames it on water leaks. But in June of 2022, that's when they upped the price to $5.40, right? They are behind by November because you think like there's a delay, right, in when charges come through. So they're first getting charged July, August, September. So they're starting to run behind November. And he's saying, well, they were on top of their bills until we raised the rate again.
They were doing so well until we decided to squeeze them for another $1 a gallon.
Dollar per 1,000 gallons.
$1 per 1,000 gallons, excuse me.
It's still, but I mean, it adds up because you see the actual water bill costs. So the final cost right now, or at least the last raise, was July 12th, 2024. And that's what raised Camp Hill's price to $6.40 per 1,000 gallons. Dadeville's rates have not gone up. They have bought their water consistently from Alexander City at $1.58 per 1,000 gallons. And that's why it's part of the lawsuit. So they got an injunction from a judge to stop Dadeville from turning off their water as they fight over this.
They've almost tripled the price on Camp Hill while keeping their price the same.
Yep.
That's exploitative.
And now think about all of those past due bills, all of the struggling. And it gets worse. But this is a big part of it, right? Like, this is a town where $5,000 in the bank matters. And now these rates have tripled, right? And you're seeing it in the bills. They're getting bills for $65,000, $69,000 a month. And this is a town that $5,000 in the bank is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So this is a town where their yearly budget is $1.5 million, right? That's not Dadeville's reality. So after the town of Camp Hill posted that statement calling out Dadeville went nuclear. So Dadeville put out this press release. This very lovely press release. For many years, the town of Camp Hill has been delinquent in paying the bills they accrue. In early 2025, Walnut Hill shut the water supply off to the town of Camp Hill, leaving the main supply of water to come from Dadeville. The water consumption has been anywhere from 8 to 11 million gallons of water for 500 customers. The town of Camp Hill has no industry. Therefore, their largest user of water should be Southern Prep Academy. For far too long, the town of Camp Hill has refused to acknowledge and repair water system issues. In 2023, there was a multi-million-dollar offer to the town of Camp Hill to get the water system repaired and release the system to another agency. Instead of Camp Hill taking the offer and having a chance to save their town, they refused. Dadeville has been accused of unfair billing practices and stealing from Camp Hill. The facts are that Camp Hill will not repair the water system. The main pump station supplying Camp Hill water has been running nonstop since January of 2025. Camp Hill admitted in court they do not have the resources to repair the system. They also recognize their electric bill has increased significantly due to that pump. Dadeville Water Board has attempted to assist Camp Hill for years with billing issues, and as published by the Dadeville Record, there's an outstanding bill of $160,475,000 with another bill coming due. Now, before we move on, let's break down a few things in that little paragraph.
Can I take victim blaming for 500, Alex?
Well, the town of Camp Hill has no industry, and whose fault is okay? I guess it's not fair to blame Dadeville for that, but like that is where the tax base is going. For far too long, the town of Camp Hill has refused to acknowledge and repair water system issues. That is categorically false. I'm going to turn it over to the recording from Messiah in a second, but just like all towns and cities in the U.S., they got ARPA money. They got American Rescue Plan money, and they specifically applied for grants to fix the water and sewage infrastructure, and they got some of those grants. That is where this BS, like, multi-million-dollar offer. By the way, when they say a multi-million-dollar offer to the town of Camp Hill to get the water system repaired and release the system to another agency, that's a very fancy way of saying turn the entire water system over to Dadeville.
Yeah, like,
that's what Dadeville wants.
One of the best ways to control a population is by controlling its water and food. And they're saying, hey, we'll give you this money to fix it if you'll make it ours afterward.
Oh, no, they want it in their control first, and then they say they're going to fix it.
Okay.
We'll get
even worse.
No, it is worse. It is worse.
Even worse.
And they say Camp Hill admitted in court they don't have the resources to repair the system because you're exploiting them. They don't have the money.
Because you're overcharging them by
beyond the scope of the contract too, right?
Yeah.
They also recognize their electric bill has increased significantly due to that pump. if they had the money to fix the pump, I'm sure they would like to fix the pump. So continuing, the Dadeville Water Board had to take quick action in sending a letter to the town of Camp Hill and demand payment or be turned off, as any service provider to the public does. If this behavior were to continue, the town of Camp Hill would bankrupt the Dadeville Water Authority, ultimately causing issues for our own community. This behavior has a trickle-down effect and ultimately harms Dadeville and Alexander City if that were to happen. If Dadeville Water Board is wrong about the amount of water passing through the meter, we will make it right as the new meter is on the way. Okay, all right, let's start here. First of all, if this behavior were to continue, is really, I don't know, it really rubs me the wrong way. It feels very patriarchal, very condescending.
Very patronizing, yeah. Very, as any service provider to the public does.
But, and then they go on and say, if this behavior were to continue, the town of Camp Hill would bankrupt the Dadeville Water Authority. They are bankrolling the Dadeville Water Authority.
Like if the Dadeville Water, okay.
Right, yeah. Okay. And then Dadeville says, if they're wrong about the amount of water passing through the meter, we will make it right. The issue is not just the fact that
the new meter is on the way.
But the issue is not just the fact that, like, the issue that Camp Hill is contesting is like, okay, first of all, the water usage seems to be a little weird because y'all's have halved and ours has increased. But regardless, even if we use this amount of water, right? Because we're just talking about the meter rates. The meter rates has quadrupled. Yeah. Why has the meter rates quadrupled? They do not address that.
Oh, yeah, no, because that would be admitting that it happened. And they don't want to even concede that reality.
So the next paragraph is, yes, the circuit court judge issued an injunction not to not turn the water off. It is not because Camp Hill has done nothing wrong, but turning the switch off would harm the community. We agree that turning off Camp Hill would hurt citizens, which is not our goal, as we are friends with the citizens of Camp Hill. The only way to get a response from the governing body of Camp Hill was to send a letter of demand for payment or turn the water off. There was a scheduled meeting for the town of Camp Hill and Dadeville Water Board to discuss the very facts they refused to acknowledge, and they were a no-show, no-call. Mayor Williams stated he emailed the clerk. Mr. Williams could have picked up the phone and called us as he didn't get a response by email. The board was sitting in the room awaiting his arrival to discuss the issues at hand. Now, the mayor is a practicing attorney. He was in court and sent an email because you can't make a call from a courtroom.
Yeah, like also if you've reached out through official channel to a public official, that should be fine. The onus should not be on you then to also call as well. Like
So yeah, the board is upset that he was a, quote, no call, no show when he sent an email to the clerk, and they're like, he should have picked up the phone and called, but he didn't get confirmation of the email sent. Now, so again, this is what Messiah said, but I see no reason to not believe him. He's the assistant district attorney, and as anybody who's ever dealt with lawyers or judges or courtrooms knows, there is the scheduled thing that the thing is supposed to happen at, and then there's the you have to be there, but the judge might be 10, 15 minutes, an hour late. You know, like things happen, and you definitely are not going to tell a judge you need to step away to take a phone call. I guess it depends on the courtroom, but that makes sense, right? And so the way this letter ends, this is why I've been reading this, because the tone of this, right? The tone of this is...
It's very condescending.
It's extremely condescending.
And also very, like, it's so hypocritical of, like, at the end they acknowledge that turning... It's like, well, turning it off would hurt them, and we don't want to hurt them. But, like, look... If somebody is dying of thirst, just give them the fucking water and work out the math later of how you can do that. Like, oh God, it's just gross.
Well, so the town then goes nuclear in the last paragraph. These issues are not between the citizens of either community. Rather, they are issues between the governing bodies and should be handled as such. As of May 1st, 2025, the Senate voted, this is the state Senate, voted unanimously 30-0 to take over the Birmingham Waterworks Board. See Senate Bill 330. And we are asking the state of Alabama to consider the same with Camp Hill. This is a threat.
Yeah.
The Birmingham Waterworks Board, let me be really clear, I'm not getting into that bill right now. As a former user of the Birmingham Waterworks Board, I hate those. I hate them. I hate them so much. However, what was done to them, there was a board takeover as a result of this bill. This was a majority black board, and the optics are not good. The optics are not good. And there is a history, right, of states taking over black municipalities' infrastructure, like in Jackson, Mississippi, and other places, right? It's another form of control. The fact that they're finishing this up with, not only are we not going to talk about the fact that we up the rates, we're going to victim blame that y'all have not put money into, you're not good stewards of money. You haven't put it back into, they're going to say that phrase, you have not been good stewards of money. This is a threat. So let's talk about that multi-million-dollar offer that Dadeville is throwing around up there. They're reading off of, there was an article, and this is what Messiah is going to be responding to, so I'm just contextualizing. But there was an article that came out in 2013 that said Camp Hill turned down $17 million to fix their water systems. And until this lawsuit came out, I was also one of those people who was like, what is going on with this? Like, there was lots of rumors, right? The town's small. Everybody's talking like the water pressure's off. Like, we got to turn the water system off all the time. Our bills are going up. Why didn't they take this money? And so now that the lawsuit is there and everything, Messiah got on Facebook Live and he talked through this. So we're going to play some clips from that.
Livestream.
Now we're gonna hear from Mayor Messiah Williams Cole himself. These are portions cut out from his Facebook Live. I will link you can watch the whole thing for yourself.
And I'm going to be telling y'all the whole story of Camp Hill's water system since I have been in office, and really going back to to maybe about 2011, 2012. This is something that, to be honest with y'all, with me not running for mayor, again, I am very, very happy to just be able to talk about some things and be talking about it. And you guys know, since I'm not running for mayor, I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I'm gonna tell you from my perspective what happened, and I'm gonna tell y'all how I feel personally as a citizen and as mayor on a lot of issues. What I will tell y'all is that the origin of everybody talking about this grant that Camp Hill denied or foregoes, as this says, I'm gonna be honest with y'all, it ain't as simple as they say.
So what he's referring to is in the live stream, he's sharing his screen and he has the article up, and the title of the article says Camp Hill foregoes $17 million in grants. And so what he's gonna go on and break down here is that that's not what happened. That's not accurate.
So as you all know, in 2020, the town of Camp Hill, well, everybody got a stimulus check. If you're a citizen and you made a certain amount, you got a stimulus check. Well, citizens aren't the only ones who got stimulus checks. Towns, municipalities, local governments, counties, even states, they all got their own form of a stimulus check. And what that stimulus check was for things like municipalities, counties, and the state, it's this thing called ARPA money. And so ARPA money this is Camp Hill's, this is how we address our ARPA money. So it comes from the American Rescue Plan Act.
So he's showing on screen the Camp Hill's application for ARPA money, and it specifically lays out that they would use the money for the sewer, water, and that kind of thing. So Camp
All
Hill,
of these issues that they've been having.
Exactly.
If you want to rescue some American people, making sure that they have access to their basic needs is quite the rescue.
Correct.
Governor Ivey basically got money from the federal government, which is like Alabama's personal stimulus check, and they gave it to the Alabama Department of Environmental Management. And that's what I will refer to as ADEM.
A quick addendum here. They gave some of it to the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, which is a good thing. Alabama also, and we're not going to go into this episode, but they also spent $400 million of that money on building 3 new mega prisons, none of which have finished construction yet. Future episode. We would not own those prisons, by the way. We would lease them. So we're going to
lease them
talk
to
about
private prison.
No. We are not leasing them out. It is a lease for us. Like, we have to pay. We won't own the building.
So in addition to it being abhorrent, it's also a bad deal?
Yes. And it's going to cost over $1 billion for one.
Okay,
yeah, but moving on. Right.
Later,
so
later.
The only pin I'm putting in that is that Alabama got more ARPA money. That is going to be a future episode. And also, this is how much good sending $225 just to environmental management, which then got distributed to the cities and municipalities. Right. Like, you could have taken some of that and upped that. But let's keep going.
So ADEM got a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money, I think the total was like $225 million that was given to ADEM to combat water and sewer issues. So there are two funds. You have the Clean Water Fund, which address sewer issues, and you have the Drinking Water Fund that addresses water issues, so the water that you drink. When ADEM got this money from Governor Ivey, what they told people, well, when I say people, I'm talking about communities. What they told communities like Camp Hill are, hey, we got this big surplus of money. You guys need to be basically applying for everything you can get. Anything that you need to basically ask for the world. We'll decide if you guys get the world, but we need to know what you guys need so that we can try to address it.
So Messiah's going to go on and explain what Camp Hill applied for, because these are two different grants, right? They're to the same place. They're to ADEM, but they have to write separate grants or grant proposals for the sewage and for the drinking water.
What ended up happening was when we heard that, when people was telling you to apply for a grant, you gonna apply for a grant. So we told them we submitted two applications. We submitted an application for clean water, and so clean water addresses your sewer system, and we applied for that, and we also applied for the drinking water fund. And the drinking water fund does stuff like regular water. So regular water is a drinking water fund. This is what we got. So right here, Town of Camp Hill, sewer sanitary system improvements, we got $6.7 million. We applied for that much. That's how much they gave us. So, and we actually just finished the first portion of that. So we've used a lot of that money. So the drinking water fund is the fund that has to go with regular water system updates. If you go in here and you search Camp Hill, just like on the other one, you press enter, you can see what we applied for. And so what we applied for in the sewer system is for water system improvement is we applied for a flat out $10 million. All right. So, and as you see right here, you see where we don't have like the roads. This shows you that we did not get approved for that $10 million.
So what Messiah is doing, because I know this is an audio podcast, he's actually pulling up the grant disbursement, which is publicly available on ADEM's website. So he was showing people like, look, I'm typing in, this is the website you go to. You can fact check this yourself. Like, I'm pulling up these are publicly available documents. You can see the money. This is what we applied for. We didn't get this 10 million. We did get the 6.7. So you're already seeing this is where the $17 million the number kind of comes from, but they got the 6.7, right? So they didn't get $10 million. So where does this
17 million.
Well, that, but also why are people saying they turned down this money? Like, what's going on with that? So he's gonna discuss that.
I received a call from ADEM because they considered our $10 million grant proposal and they gave us a counter offer. So the counter offer, which was spearheaded by one of our, I believe, I don't have any physical proof of this, but which I believe was spearheaded by one of our representatives was, hey, instead of giving this grant to Camp Hill, let's give this grant to Dadeville to take over their water systems. Messiah Williams Cole, mayor of Camp Hill, did not turn down any grants. All right. First off, Messiah Williams Cole and the town council, which includes seat 1, Constance Hurd, seat 2, Juanita Woody, seat 3, Dwayne Blackwell, seat 4, Robert Guel Shelley, and seat 5, Miss Deborah Sue Thomas. We all, and when I say we all, we unanimously, as in we were all in agreement that us giving our water to Dadeville was not what is best for the town of Camp Hill. So it was not a Messiah made up this decision, that the mayor made this decision. We as a team, and when I say as a team, we as a team made this decision. One reason we denied the grant is because we were told that Dadeville would get this grant. So it wouldn't be the town Camp Hill getting the grant, number one. It would be the city of Dadeville getting the grant, and then the city of Dadeville is to apply it to Camp Hill. What we asked for is 3 things. We asked that, number one, town, you still be able to pay your bills at town hall, and we got that. And that was important to us because a lot of people in Camp Hill they can't drive to Dadeville. Well, they can, but they can't get to Camp Hill. I mean, to Dadeville as quick as they can get to Town Hall. So that was very important to me and the council. The second thing that I want to say about that is that we were told, well, if Dadeville had to invest more money beyond what the grant provided, that citizens of Camp Hill could be paying more than what citizens of Dadeville were paying for their water. And that is crazy because number one, it is no more Camp Hill and Dadeville water system. The water system would be all of Dadeville. So with that being all of Dadeville, that's crazy. Why would we have to pay a different price than Dadeville if we are being given to Dadeville? That didn't make sense to me.
So to recap right there, right, this is different than the water rates. They're talking about these discussions that's going on in early 2022, 2023, right? They don't know about the water rates yet. So the counter offer that ADEM gives them is that you're not going to get the $10 million. We will give it to the city of Dadeville. Dadeville will take over your water system, thus making it just the Dadeville water system, right? Right. And if the $10 million does not cover the cost of the repairs that Dadeville will be in charge of doing on your system, they're going to charge your residents more money. Now, this is all one system now. So instead of being like, okay, well, we need to make up this money, everybody's rate's going to go up like 20 cents, per 1,000 gallons.
They're wanting all of the authority and power with none of the actual responsibility that comes with it, without any of the obligation to the citizenry, who they would ostensibly be looking out for the best interest of, but it would be playing favorites.
Yeah, between the residents of Dadeville would be getting one water rate, and the residents of Camp Hill would be getting a different water rate when they're under the same water authority.
I don't blame Mayor Williams Cole or the City Council of Dadeville for
the City Council of Camp Hill.
City Council of Camp Hill for declining that particular offer, because that's bullshit.
And I didn't include this, but Mayor Masai goes into that they had a lot of meetings about this, that this was not a like one and done, like there was a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
But they unanimously decided, like there was a consensus. So I'm going to keep going with this.
And the third thing, and I want y'all to keep this in mind, because for Mayor Messiah, this was good, but for Citizen Messiah, this was bad. The third thing was, or we can do a plan where Dadeville would collect the bills and Camp Hill would be paid what we kind of made now in water. And I'll tell you why that's a problem for why that's a problem for Citizen Messiah, but not for Mayor Messiah. As I told y'all before, if I did not have a utility department, I would not have any problem. If I didn't have to worry about water leaks and I didn't have to worry about the sewer or anything like that, I'm telling you, my life as a mayor would be so much easier. It would be so easy for Mayor Messiah to say, listen, Dave, y'all have this, y'all do it, and I'll figure the rest out. I'm telling y'all, for Mayor Messiah, it would be that easy. But for Citizen Messiah, it was not going to work, because the good thing about this is that if any of y'all have any problem with anything I have done or the council have done, the next time it is an election, you can vote them out of office. If y'all have a problem with what we are doing with our water bill, with Camp Hill's water bill, y'all can come to council meeting and you can fuss about it and you can do all that. If Dadeville was to run our water system, you guys could not vote anybody on that water board out. You guys could not vote the mayor who sits on the board in Dadeville out. You could not do that. Why, as a citizen, would I want to be ruled without representation and a say in what has to be done to me? And it has already been said that they can charge a different price in Camp Hill than what they charge in Dadeville. That just never made sense to me. That never makes sense to me. To this day, it don't make sense to me. Even if that means as mayor, I wouldn't have a headache. So that never made sense to me as a citizen. So those were a couple of the reasons that we decided not to go with. But I want y'all to understand that this was a decision not that Messiah came up with, but that the elected officials that you all elected by a majority vote came up with, and we made on consideration of all the factors that we had to play.
So yeah, again, I think that's a really reasonable decision. It's well thought out. Like, yeah, I mean,
His reasoning is sound, both like just logically and morally. Like when we talk about the American Revolution, we talk about, no taxation without
he makes a
representation,
reference to that at some point too. Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, you should have a say in who is in charge of your drinking water. That it's insane to even consider elsewise. Like,
Right. And that is also what Dadeville is threatening, right? Is a state takeover of Camp Hill's water system in response to them essentially not kowtowing to this agreement. Because remember, so this agreement, right, is in, I believe the agreement. I would actually have to ask Messiah, some of the council members, like when the conversation started. But remember, there's two price hikes, one in 2023 and one in 2024, and I'm kind of curious if there was a price hike after they initially turned down this offer, because I think the timeline lines up, but I'd have to do a little bit more digging to confirm that. So Messiah goes on. He is, at this point, he's just reading directly from the article. This article came out in 2023. It's from the Elk City Outlook, and I didn't really feel the need to quote from it myself because he's going to kind of talk through it.
And another thing I want you guys to consider is that right here it says Camp Hill may have made a decision that will cost the town $17 million. And this is another thing I want to tell you guys. There was never no $13 million, $17 million offered. This is the deal that was offered. The deal that was offered was that we would be getting the $6.7 million that we got anyways, plus an additional $7 million to do whatever we needed with the water. And that would be, so we didn't give up 17. And this is one of the reasons, excuse my language, this is one of the things that pissed me off. I wouldn't be so mad about these things and feel so many ways about these things if people just told the truth. The truth is we didn't turn down no 17 million. We turned down $7 million. Which $7 million is still a lot of money, but why do you have to lie and say it's 17?
Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of ballooned over time, and again, people have been frustrated with this water system for good reason for a long time.
yeah,
I, as somebody who was a consumer of
client.
yeah, of Birmingham Waterworks Board, like Birmingham Waterworks sucks. It sucks so bad, but that doesn't mean that I want the white affluent areas around Birmingham to take it over, which is what happened. That is not improving my life. That's not the fix. So let me contextualize this. So one of the claims, right, that Dadeville is making in that letter is that Camp Hill's bills are high because their water leaks a lot, right? They have a lot of water leaks, which
I recall
again
that argument
is
being made.
not addressing the rate hike part. That's at the meter. That has nothing to do with what's happening downstream. And so Messiah is gonna poke some holes in that.
Every single water system in the state of Alabama has water leaks. Every single system. If you are telling me that there is a water system in the state of Alabama that does not have a water leak, they are lying to you. The average water leak in a town is about 10%. We have good water systems around us that have about 10 to 11 and at most 15%. But a good water system is still gonna have water loss. I mean, that just is.
So I don't remember if I clipped this out or not, but he does say that, like, in terms of water infrastructure and infrastructure in general, Alabama's in, once again, the lower half of right. So, but he's just talking about for average in Alabama, the water systems lose 10%, which is, yeah, I saw your face. Yeah, I too was like, wait, sorry, what?
Imagine that you're doing like hurricane like prep and you get yourself 10 gallons of water and one of them falls off the back of your truck, but that's happening every single day with.
I mean, this is what chronic disinvestment on a statewide level looks like.
Yeah, it's just like, guys.
It's really so I don't think I included this either. The roads in Camp Hill are really rough. Like, they are crater of the moon rough. And there was a lot of disagreement about, like, well, we need to fill these potholes, and Messiah's like, but we got this money to redo the sewer. We have to rip up the roads to do the sewer. I don't want to spend any money fixing the roads when we have to rip them up to fix the sewer. And then, right, you're waiting to find out if you're going to get this water money too, because you should just rip up the roads once to do all of it at once. No, we're not going to get it. Okay, rip them up for just the sewer. Like, these are the decisions that are going on behind the scenes, right? And they're having to make these decisions while there are other folks pulling the strings as to what they want to happen for Camp Hill.
So much bullshit. So much bullshit.
Mhm.
the good folks of Camp Hill are having to deal with.
Yep.
Just to have water, and just to have the water coming in, and to have somewhere to put the water when you're done with it. Like,
And remember, like at this point, a lot of folks have gotten their roofs patched, right? But people are still living with the effects of the hailstorm, right? So it's
right.
just shit on top of shit. Now, again, Camp Hill is remarkably resilient, and I really think that's because of the character of the people there. There are things that are in Camp Hill's corner that we're gonna end on. But yeah, things have been done to Camp Hill. Okay, so the sewer lines and water lines are different, right? They're different lines.
Right.
So the first claim that he's debunking is the water line. And he's going to talk about the sewer, and he brings up I think a pretty salient point about Alexander City. So Camp Hill, not just geographically, but terrain wise, right? It's elevated. Well, of course, like a lake is like the lower elevation, right? So if there are sewer problems in Camp Hill, or if there's stuff, it's gonna run downstream. So he's gonna explain why that's a silly argument.
Leaks in the sewer lines. What I want to tell y'all about the sewer lines is that I'm going to tell y'all a big reason why I feel, and again, I don't have any proof of this, but why ADM gave us the sewer money anyways is because if y'all know anything about Camp Hill, is that Camp Hill is full of creeks, and all of our creeks eventually run into Lake Martin. What I want to know, what I want y'all to know is that if Camp Hill had leaks in their sewer lines and it was feeding into Lake Martin, Camp Hill would be upside down. It ain't no way they would let Lake Martin be infected by sewer. So I want y'all to know that we would have some fallback from that. In fact, when I got into office, we were under a consent decree, and a consent decree is a fancy way of saying y'all need to comply with something. By 2021, we were ahead of where the consent decree said we needed to be in terms of our water system. So there's no way that we have leaks in our sewer lines, and even if we had leaks, and we don't have leaks in our sewer lines, and even if we did have leaks in our sewer lines, that don't make sense because we don't pay Dadeville for anything dealing with our sewer. Sewer is something we handle in Camp Hill at our lagoon. They say officials worked out a deal with Dadeville Waterworks and Sewer Board for Camp Hill to catch up on payments. If they did that, they never reached out to the town of Camp Hill to see what the town of Camp Hill wanted. And that's a problem. Part of this whole lawsuit with Dadeville, and I feel free with talking about it because y'all know it's true, Camp Hill has always been treated like little stepbrother to the city of Dadeville. They've never considered us as a peer. They've never considered us to come to the table. They see Camp Hill not as, I wouldn't even say for the taking, but they see us as less than them, which is a problem. We send our kids to school in Dadeville. We have friends and family in Dadeville. Some of the best people I know are from Dadeville, but yet they treat us like second-class citizens when it comes to our government, which is a problem when we are peers.
You don't even have to take his word for it. The tone of that letter.
It's so condescending.
The town letter, like they're sending it to the town council, but they published it, right? They sent this to press and they published it on their social media.
Yeah.
Right. Like that was for everybody to read, and that was the tone.
Because that whole letter was talking down. It wasn't saying we look forward to working with Camp Hill to resolving this situation or anything. It was very, well, they've made all of these mistakes and we are blameless. And
yeah,
I can see where Mayor Williams Cole is coming from.
Oh, I can see it really clearly.
So
we're going to continue a little bit.
The city of Dadeville has attempted to cooperate with Camp Hill to address this matter since March, when initial negotiations with ADM began, according to Representative Ed Oliver. Now, what I will tell y'all about this, and this is how I believe this. Ed Oliver represents not only the city of Dadeville, but he also represents the town of Camp Hill. Why are you out there trying to actively sabotage what we have going on in the city? I mean, the town of Camp Hill. You work not only for them, but you work for us.
Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver is probably best known at this point for anti-DEI bills. He was like the original kind of pusher. He called them divisive concepts, and he pushed them for years until it finally went through last year, and there's an active lawsuit on that. The anti-DEI bill is absolutely going to be something we talk about in the future. The best way I can explain Ed Oliver is letting him talk in his own words. For context, this clip, this is from December 19th, 2022. He is talking about his anti-DEI bill that's filed for the upcoming, 2023 session, right? This article comes out in 2023. Like, this is all kind of around the same.
This is all concurrent.
Well, this is maybe a little bit beforehand, but he is talking to Right Side Radio about his divisive concepts bill and why he believes we need it. This is gross.
But until somebody makes people aware of what is actually getting pushed down to their students, and it starts at the colleges, and it's the educators teaching the educators that in turn end up in your school, that's where the problem starts. And ultimately, the reason the left wants to push CRT amongst little kids is simply they want to sexualize them. They want to racialize them at an early age to make them easy to manage. Pure and simple. I hate to say a way to create more left wingers that are woke and will do the things that the left wants them to do, but that's exactly what it is. And it's to divide people, to make groups fight each other so they're easier to manage. The things that are absolutely absurd to take from 200 years ago and try to translate into modern times and blame someone for, which is basically what CRT does, would be to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion training, which is infiltrated into every school we have, and literally has just taken over education. And it's sort of the dumbing down of post-secondary education.
I've got my own decades of military service as well, and you yourself were an Army guy. In all your years of serving, did you see systemic racism in the ranks as we're being told nowadays?
Never.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. I agree. Never did. Did I see the one-off occasion where someone said something off color? Yes. But did I ever see a systemic issue? Nope. Never once.
Never. Nothing. I was an inspector general, and systemic issues were my specialty.
Wow.
Never in the 4 years I served as an inspector general, I don't think I ever had a race issue.
So that's Ed Oliver, Representative Ed Oliver, and I think that speaks for itself.
I'm gonna guess that Mr. Oliver is Caucasian.
Oh, very, very.
I'm gonna guess that the gentleman he was talking to on that broadcast is also Caucasian.
Oh, very. To bring us back to what we were doing, Messiah Williams Cole is reading from this article in 2023, where State Representative Ed Oliver, who is the representative for Camp Hill as well as Dadeville, he covers both areas. He has given statements to, in this case, I believe it's the Alex City Outlook. It might also be the Dadeville Record about how Camp Hill is not managing, their water system well and everything, right? And so Messiah's going to continue to read these quotes.
But he said the negotiations were recently stalled after Camp Hill representative refused an agreement to release control of the system. Camp Hill would still receive a portion of the revenue. So again, as Mayor Messiah, if I gave stuff over to Dadeville and Dadeville controlled it and the town of Camp Hill still got money, yes. Oh, that would be so good for Mayor Messiah. Mayor Messiah wouldn't have that much work to do. I wouldn't have to continue to go around that. But for Citizen Messiah, what that meant is that I would not have a say in anything that would go on with my own town's water system. So the current markup that Camp Hill gets when they sell the water to their customers, the city of Dadeville will cut them a check. So again, that's the deal we offer to them. Again, why would citizens of Camp Hill be paying what they are currently paying instead of what Dadeville is charging their own residents? That does not make sense. Why would we pay more than people who are in the same system as us? That never made sense to me and the council. It was no way you could justify us having to pay the same to pay more than the city of Dadeville customers, even though we were going to be owned by the city of Dadeville. So what Representative Oliver said right here is true. The current mock-up that Camp Hill gets when they sell the water to their customers, the city of Dadeville will cut them a check. That ain't doing nothing for the people who don't have to answer to them. All right. So Tallahassee County Commissioner T.C. Kohler said he also participated in negotiations as an additional neutral party. He did. He attended both the Camp Hill Council meeting and the ADM conference call to discuss the matter. In order for Camp Hill to receive the grants, they would have to turn over the operations of its water utility department to the city of Dadeville because ADM had a concern the town had a history of not reinvesting the revenue from its utilities into maintaining the existing infrastructure. And he said ADM would feel more comfortable that the use of taxpayers' dollars would be more successful.
So in terms of revenue, right, the town of Camp Hill is paying Dadeville for water, right? Now their residents are paying them. They are taking a little bit like off the top, or at least they're supposed to be able to, right? So Dadeville is charging them X rate, and they're charging just like a little bit more to their own customers. Like they have to maintain their own lines, right? And when their water main breaks, Dadeville is not paying for that. So in addition to like the baseline water rate, every water utility down the line is having to charge a little bit more to their actual customers.
Right.
So what Messiah's talking about here is like the town itself gets revenue from its citizens when they pay their water bill, and they use that money to pay Dadeville. Now they are supposed to have a little bit of that money left over so that they can reinvest. And what ADEM's issue is that they're like, well, over, you've had these financial issues. There's just been a consistent lack of investment in your own infrastructure coming from, the money that you're getting from your people, right? So Messiah's going to get into that a little bit.
Oliver said the requirement was appropriate given the town's water bill issue persisting for several years. And I'm going to get into that water bill issue now that we have an explanation for it. Based on past performance, that would not be smart, he said. There are other people in Alabama that would be better stewards of the money.
So yeah, also the fact that, again, Representative Oliver is saying there are other people in Alabama who'd be better stewards of that money. Representative Oliver is from Dadeville. I find it interesting. He's not just saying like Dadeville would be better stewards, just other people in Alabama. So it's also leaving the door open for the state to take over the system, a thing that was not ever publicly said until Dadeville published that letter. What was that? It was May 23rd, like last month. So that's the first that this is entered into like the public lexicon. And yet I don't know if I'm reading too much into what Representative Oliver is saying there or his phrasing, but that to me, that makes it seem like when they weren't playing ball initially, like this was a road that they were thinking about.
It's definitely a pathway that they're keeping open with how they're phrasing things and setting things up.
Yeah, I do find that extremely curious.
It again, like we were talking about earlier, is this just coincidence, or is this intentional? Is this a person from Dadeville seeking to give his core constituency an advantage over other aspects of his constituency?
If you remember earlier in the live stream, Messiah says, I believe this was engineered by a state representative. I don't have any proof of that. He's talking about Representative Oliver.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reasonable assumption to make at this point, given the facts that we have, because this is pretty egregious. So continuing.
Yeah.
Okay, so Messiah Williams Cole, Mayor Messiah, is going to continue breaking down this article and talking about some of the comments that Representative Oliver made. And again, this article was published in 2023, and that's going to be relevant in a minute.
According to Oliver, there were several reasons that Camp Hill officials were hesitant on giving up control of their water system. Their concerns are a loss of employees. The mayor also made a statement about political issues within the city of Dadeville, which I've lived here my whole life, and I never knew we had political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. We certainly didn't have any that would make you walk away from 10 million. Okay. If you are from Camp Hill, I want you guys to tell me if you believe that what this just said. I never knew we had political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. We have on record times where the city of Dadeville has threatened to do this and that to Camp Hill. They know it's a political issue. And I'm not saying, and when I say that, I'm not referring to Mayor Goodman and I'm not referring to any of them personally. What I'm saying is that historically, I was born in 1999. Before 1999 even, there were political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. There just were.
I just want to remind all of us of what was going on in part one, right? When you look at the history of Camp Hill, when Ralph Gray was lynched, they dragged his body to the Dadeville courthouse steps. And this is history that not only does Mayor Messiah Williams Cole know, but so does Representative Ed Oliver. So I mentioned at the beginning of this clip that this article that Mayor Williams Cole is reading from and that Ed Oliver is quoted in is from 2023. And the reason that that date's important is because there is a different article that came out. It was written by Siri Hadreen in April 6, 2022. And the title of that article is Camp Hill Fights to Uplift Black Communist Legacy Buried by Racism and Red Scare. And both the mayor and Representative Oliver are quoted in this article.
Wasn't Representative Oliver also the one on that we played the clip from who was like, I've never seen of racism
Yes.
while I was in the military?
Yes.
It's not a thing.
Yes.
And then it's like, I do this on a historic scale. The 1910s were not that long ago. Like 100 years is a lot to one person, but on the arc of history is pretty recent.
Right, but like again, there's the further past, right? What Mayor Messiah is talking about in that clip was more recent history, right? Like since the time he's been alive, even like right before it. So you're thinking about like the 80s, which is again when that white flight is happening. All of these other things are going on. There are two communities that are tied very closely together, you know, like economically, they're friends, family there. You know, mayor goes out of his way to
The Camp
talk
Hill
about
kids go to school in Dadeville.
Correct.
Like
they shop, they live, like they're close communities, right? They have their friends, there's all these things. But to say that there isn't on a structural level
on an
pressure
institutional level.
right, that Dadeville puts pressure on. And so when I say that Representative Oliver is well aware of this history, I actually went back to reread this article right before we were recording this and realized I needed to rewrite the entire ending of this episode because I forgot that he was in this. So that audio clip we played of Ed Oliver is from December 12th, 2022. This article is from April 6th, 2022. So in April, he's in this article, and then he goes on to say that stuff on the radio, right? And the article that Messiah is reading from is from a few months later in 2023. I think it's like April or May 2023. So why am I saying this like this about this article? This connects right back to part one. So this article describes the incident we talked about from Hammer and Hoe. I am not going to go over the lynching again. I think I went into enough detail in part one.
Yes.
And yeah, we don't need to.
It's thorough.
Yes. We actually quoted this article in the introduction of part one. That is one of the first quotes you read that said, outside academia, however, today the violent standoffs in Reeltown and Camp Hill are little known. You read specifically the line, the history is well documented, both in Hammer and Hoe, written in 1990, and Dale's husband Theodore Rosengarten's 1974 book, All God's Dangers, The Life of Nate Shaw. Now let's talk about the Rosengartens, because this is where it gets really interesting, because Ed Oliver has met the Rosengartens. Yeah, I also was really surprised to learn this. So in 2019, All God's Dangers author Ted Rosengarten was visiting Tallapoosa County with a different interview subject, the folk artist Lonnie Hawley, and I'm reading from the article, who was trying to trace his roots. This effort led him to Camp Hill to a man of the same last name, former Mayor Frank Hawley, who was the first black mayor of Camp Hill. When they arrived, Frank was at the breakfast table immersed in a stack of papers. The papers just so happened to be his wife's Dale, so Ted's wife Dale, 1969 undergraduate essay, The Sharecroppers Union. My knowledge of the Sharecroppers Union came through Dale's research, and Dale is without a doubt the expert on the Sharecroppers Union, said Ted Rosengarten. And Frank Hawley is sitting there when they meet for the first time in 2019, reading the Sharecroppers Union, his wife's research. Mm-hmm. He said it was a bizarre coincidence, and Frank says, oh, don't tell me about it. I've read this book, 4 or 5 times. So they're in town, right? It's 2019. So in part one, I read a quote from the Camp Hill attorney, Gillen Waters, and I said, put a pin in that about some people don't want us to talk about this history, about the history of Ralph Gray, of Lizzie Norris. And I said, put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. This article is where that quote comes from. And it goes on to say, considering he, and this is about Representative Oliver, considering he has a bill making sure we can't talk about our history, and I mean our history, Gillen Waters said at the March meeting, the teacher isn't even going to be able to mention this, referring to Ralph Gray. If she does, then they're going to fire her. That's sad. So he's talking about the divisive concepts bill that Oliver was pushing at the time. Now, it did not pass that year, It passed last year, 2024, the 2024 session. But this has been something that's been going on and going on. You know, when asked to comment, Oliver denied Galen Waters' hypothetical and said that the bill would absolutely not prohibit mention of Ralph Gray. It doesn't prevent any history of teaching. But we've seen after the anti-DEI bill has passed what has happened, you know, on the institutional level. We're now living in the aftermath of that. And like I said, we will talk about that in the future. But I just want to make it really clear, again, Ed Oliver is aware of this history. And this is where it gets really weird. And this is also where his comments that they're communists and Marxists coming in to indoctrinate our children now strikes me as really weird, because that's a consistent line I've heard from him. I never really thought of it being strange before. And then I read this.
It's such a common part of, like, especially Republican rhetoric.
Right. That it didn't
just kind of, like, they called Democrats communists.
Right. Like, it just sort of means nothing at this point.
Communist is political person I don't like.
Truly.
For a lot of folks.
Here's where it gets really weird. All right. Ed Oliver's father, John Oliver.
Not to be confused with the host of Last Week Tonight.
No, this is not the same guy. They live in Dadeville, right? He was still in grade school in July 1931 when he heard gunshots down the street. John saw Ralph Gray's corpse on the Dadeville steps, and he saw people take turns shooting at his body. And he was able to tell the Rosengartens that exactly where it was. It was the entrance to the county jail near what is now the health department. And here's what Ed Oliver said about his father's experience. He walked up the street and actually witnessed what was going on, Oliver said, and it changed him. He became very compassionate about race and relations and spent the rest of his life doing everything he could to help Black people be educated and integrated. And it gets weirder. So flash forward to 1968, and Dale...
I just want to let's give kudos to the human being who saw suffering and like changed his behavior based on that.
How did he produce this man as his son? It's so confusing.
That is wild, because it's like, yeah, that's a very human response to seeing something so horrific,
right?
And then your son's like directly, yes, it is baffling.
So Dale Rosengarten, so remember, this is the person's whose research on the Sharecroppers Union, the book that she wrote, that Frank Hawley, the first Black mayor, is reading back in 2019 when they meet. This is before she's written it, right? She's doing the initial research. They're not married yet. It's then boyfriend Ted and Dale, right? And it's 1968. They're visiting Alabama. There are two, quote, long, hard college students from Massachusetts driving around at the height of the civil rights agitation in order to gather researcher for her Sharecroppers Union thesis. It was in the courthouse that she met John Oliver, who took an interest in her work. So 2 years later, Ted returned to write All God's Danger. So these are the books, right, that they're talking about in the opening of Hammer and Hoe. And they stayed with the Olivers when they came to write their materials. So Ed, at this point, now Representative Ed Oliver, was in high school at the time, and it says he was the lone Republican in a family of Democrats. Now, again, these things meant kind of different things. I mean, we're at the split of the Dixiecrat. So 2 years later, so that'd be 1970. I think the Southern Dixiecrat split has happened, or has probably started to happen, but that is just, that's really that's something to me. And then it keeps going. So it goes on to say that Representative Ed Oliver is saying, I knew him, Ted, very, very well. He came to visit me at the University of Alabama. So this is an ongoing relationship, right? So they stay in the Oliver's home for at least some period of their research, right? This is 1968. 2 years later, Ted returns to Dadeville to write All God's Dangers, or at least he returned to the area. According to this article, now Representative Oliver is saying that sometimes that Ted Rosengarten stayed in their home. And he also goes on to say, I knew him very, very well. He came to visit me at the University of Alabama.
So it wasn't just that this was a family friend. This is somebody that he was also close enough with to receive as a visitor,
right? When he was in university, and so originally when they're coming, he's in high school. Yeah, I'm very confused. So to back this up, this article comes out April 6th, 2022. Ed Oliver has already filed at least one version of the Divisive Concepts Bill, the anti-DEI bill, right? The audio clip just to play it again so that folks remember what we're referring to. This bit.
But until somebody makes people aware of what is actually getting pushed down to their students, and it starts at the colleges, and it's the educators teaching the educators, that in turn end up in your school, that's where the problem starts. And ultimately, the reason the left wants to push CRT amongst little kids is simply they want to sexualize them. They want to racialize them at an early age to make them easy to manage.
Right. So he says this quote, by the way, this is December 19th, 2022. This is after this article is out. Like, public knowledge that he is talking about this connection, right? In the Alexander City Outlook. What kind of blew my mind with this is it's honestly easier thinking of Representative Ed Oliver as a caricature. I certainly have for a while. He has not said many things to dissuade me from that particular understanding of him as a person. He is not one of the folks who has multifaceted build. This has been his thing. So when he says it starts at the colleges and it's the educators teaching the educators, I can't help but think about the Rosengardens who are staying in his family home to write their theses. They are professors, like they then visit him at the University of Alabama. They are doing this deep research. And then this idea that to learn things that they wrote would be considered indoctrination, racializing. When you have this personal connect, and then to go on to say,
according to Oliver, there were several reasons that Camp Hill officials were hesitant on giving up control of their water system. Their concerns are a loss of employees. The mayor also made a statement about political issues within the city of Dadeville, which I've lived here my whole life, and I never knew we had political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. We certainly didn't have any that would make you walk away from 10 million. If you are from Camp Hill, I want you guys to tell me if you believe what this just said. I never knew we had political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. We have on record times where the city of Dadeville has threatened to do this and that to Camp Hill. They know it's a political issue. And I'm not saying, and when I say that, I'm not referring to Mayor Goodman and I'm not referring to any of them personally. What I'm saying is that historically, I was born in 1999. Before 1999 even, there were political issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville. There just were.
The article that Messiah is quoting from, right, is I think it's like spring of 2023. So that's just a few months after he says that audio clip, right? And so then for Ed Oliver to then give a quote about how he's never heard of any racial problems, historical problems between Dadeville and Camp Hill, that is absurd.
That is a lie.
Or he just is thinking like, oh, well, that's in the past. But again,
but that's historical.
Right. I just, I suppose no person is like a character.
Perfect.
I'm not talking about perfect. No. I think this is truly reprehensible. Like, to one who much is given, much is expected.
With great power comes great responsibility.
He had access to fundamental knowledge that actually most white people will not be confronted with.
Yeah.
He had a father who witnessed a lynching in their hometown, and then he does this with his life. So no, I'm not saying this to not judge him harshly. If anything, this makes it worse.
Oh yeah,
this makes it so much worse.
This isn't. He's not speaking from a place of ignorance. If he was speaking from a place of ignorance, then some of it could be dismissed as that. But no, he knows. He has secondhand experience of something terrible.
He's had firsthand experience with the people who wrote the seminal works on the Sharecroppers Union. And then he's talking about this as Marxist communist. You know that is a specific legacy in Alabama that is tied to Black liberation and is not, that's not Soviet Union communism. I mean,
No.
There's a lot of layers to this. And I had not fully appreciated how much of an apparent liar this man is.
Yeah,
I really had just taken him as a true believer in the terrible sense. Like he believes these like stupid things. No, he knows better. He knows better, and he's doing it on purpose.
No,
and that I'm tiptoeing around the libel line here, but like, given the evidence that I have in front of my face and the things that he has said out of his own mouth, I am finding it difficult to find any other conclusion other than he's openly lying. It appears to be that.
The mental gymnastics required for it to be him not lying make it seem like that is the more likely
The likely outcome.
likely outcome in,
And
in this
then-
particular case. I'm not saying he is. I don't know. I can't speak to what's in another's heart, as this expression goes, but
then add to all of this, right, the layer of the water crisis. And Dadeville taking over their water supply, and Representative Oliver, likely being the person that both, Mayor Messiah Williams Cole and I suspect to be the representative behind it, that Mayor Williams Cole is talking about, that orchestrated the whole plan of, no, that money won't go to Camp Hill. They're not good stewards of it. It should go to Dadeville, and they should take that town over. And it's one of those another layer of colonialism. Honestly, I mean, just I don't know. It's a lot of things. It's a lot of things.
We're getting very much into the if it looks like a duck, acts like a duck, quacks like a duck kind of situation of.
I mean, I'm laying it out. People can make their own conclusions, but I'm hearing a duck going crazy over there.
I'm also hearing some quack.
So Mayor Williams Cole is aware of this history, like when he is saying that. And I believe he is saying there's issues between Camp Hill and Dadeville, like on a systemic level or like on an institutional level. He's talking about much more recent things than just this past history of lynching and violence. Right. And well, he is definitely talking about the water bill. So let's keep going.
So he said it beats anything I've ever seen in city government. I can't say that there are nefarious reasons or somebody's up to no good, but I can tell you that what they just did was the most irresponsible things for their constituents. What I'll say about being irresponsible to your constituents is being irresponsible to your constituents means your constituents will not have a say in what goes on in their own town. Oliver said the decision is disastrous for Camp Hill's future. Infrastructure is what promotes growth. Oliver said, right now, there's no tax base to speak of in Camp Hill. There could be, but I could guarantee with this decision by the city government that is effectively dead as a dam. I would be surprised if it is still incorporated in 5 years.
Did you hear that? Ed Oliver said, I'll be surprised if they are incorporated in 5 years.
Yeah, that feels very close to wishing failure upon your neighbor, which is...
One could almost argue creating the conditions for that failure.
It is the type of thing that someone creating such conditions would say in a shadowy corner of a room, like conspiratorially.
And bring us back to that first section.
Publicly.
Bring it back to that. Well, Alabama, they love to say these things out loud. It's just that they rarely get connected in this way. And so when it's laid out like that, you're like, wow, you were just loud about this, huh? But, I haven't really seen anybody kind of piece all of these disparate pieces together. And if there's one thing I'm going to do, it's draw a line between a lot of different things and be like, I think this makes a picture, actually. But if you remember earlier in this episode, we talked about gentrification and Lake Martin. So when we're talking about Camp Hill no longer being a town, right, that means all of this land, if you remember that Zillow outline, right, it ends right at Camp Hill. Camp Hill is that the hamburger patty squished between the bun of like Lake Martin and ever expanding, the Dadeville region, and Auburn, who's also gentrifying and also expanding their city boundaries. They're the ones in the middle, right? There's Waverly as well. But Waverly is equally small and is not majority black. That is like the creep of gentrification, the creep of realtors, of developers has already happened and started to happen around Camp Hill. So when you say this town won't be incorporated in 5 years, this is a region that is going to undergo, whether it is under the control of Camp Hill residents or whether they are forcefully taken over, is going to undergo tremendous growth in the next 10 years. So to look at this town and go, they're not going to be incorporated, like that's another
it's a
layer.
Bit sinister.
It really
more than a bit.
It really is.
I frequently engage in understatement, but that is like.
I think it's. I mean,
that's
try
like
to be
Saturday
really,
cartoon villain kind of.
I really try to be really clear with like what I know as fact, where I got facts from, and what is conjecture, and this is very much like my opinion. There's no reporting or anything that I'm aware of that ties Representative Oliver to this, or but it's one of those things where it's like, I can see with my own lying eyes, there's a financial incentive here for the developers in this area to move into Camp Hill. This is a town that's been historically struggling financially. There are layers here, right? So we're gonna go back to the mayor and less on me pontificating about my opinion.
To Oliver, they're in my district, so I will help them in any way I can, but I'm not sure how that will be. Okay. Since we have turned down this deal, I can tell you now, Ed Oliver has never reached out to me concerning anything else to benefit the citizens of Camp Hill.
To be clear, this audio recording, this is from last week.
Oh,
Everything Messiah is saying here, this is from June 11th, 2025.
this
so when
month.
Right. 2 weeks before we're recording this. So when he says, they're my constituents, I'll reach out and help them however they can, the article where this quote is from 2023. Messiah is reading this in 2025. So let's run that again.
They're in my district, so I will help them in any way I can, but I'm not sure how that will be. Okay. Since we have turned down this deal, I can tell you now, Ed Oliver has never reached out to me concerning anything else to benefit the citizens of Camp Hill. He just hasn't. He has not.
I was talking earlier about getting kudos to people. I think if there were more folks like Mayor Williams Cole in elected positions who were genuinely taking their duty to their citizens as such a high priority, things might be a bit better.
I think if the man that Mayor Williams Cole has grown into was in office from the beginning, things would have been different.
Mm-hmm.
I am glad that he is very much stepping up for his constituents now. And I'm not saying that he ever didn't step up for his constituents. I will say that there are some folks in Camp Hill who have some strong feelings about his efficacy during the hailstorm. That is folks' opinions, and I don't live in the community. I'm just saying, like, there's some differing opinions on that. So so he's going to now break down from a mayoral point of view. Like, I talked about the numbers earlier about how Dadeville's water usage shrank.
Yeah, the bigger cities' water usage shrank and the cost stayed the same per unit, but the number of units and the cost of those units going out to Camp Hill increased. It's a very curious situation
It is
mathematically.
very curious. So he's going to talk through that.
Usually month to month, Camp Hill bills out to our citizens about 4 to 5 million gallons of water. But we usually buy from Dadeville 6 million gallons of water. So if you do the math, that leaves us at about 20% water loss. So I told y'all a good system usually has about 8 to 15% water loss. Camp Hill is at 20. So we're not good, but we ain't terrible. The system in Birmingham, their water loss that got taken over by the state, their water loss was at about 60%. So we ain't losing 60% of water. So right here, on the average month, Dadeville buys 21. Usually, Dadeville buys 21 million gallons. So right here, Dadeville bought 22 million gallons, and we bought 6 million gallons. But they paid $4,000 less than what we paid. And what I want y'all to ask is, how is that even possible? So if we were paying $39,000, we not only paid for everybody's water in Dadeville, so that includes every citizen, every business who buys from Dadeville. And I know Walnut Hill has a backup to Dadeville, so everybody who bought water from Dadeville, we not only paid all of their bills, but we gave them an extra $4,000, and Dadeville got everybody who has to pay a water bill in Dadeville's money too. What kind of sense did that make? What kind of sense did that make? February 2025. Alex City to Dadeville. Alex City sent Dadeville a bill for 16 million gallons, but Dadeville billed us a bill for 10 million gallons. All right. If we using on average 6 million gallons and they using on average 15 million gallons, how now is Dadeville only using 6 million gallons, but we using 10 million gallons? And this is something else I want to tell y'all. Your water, the water you use can always go up because you can always have a water leak. You can always have something like that. But one thing I will tell you, there is never, ever, ever, ever going to be a scenario where a place can cut down on their average water bill by millions, by more than 5-6 million gallons, by more than 2-3 million gallons, because that means you would have to lose customers. And again, they only paid $25,000 as a whole. We were supposed to pay them $68,000. So we gonna pay them $68,000. So that more than covers that covers 2 months of their bill to Ellick City, and then you still have an additional $18,000 they get. Please make that make sense. How does that make sense?
So if you remember that reporting from Lee Hedgepeth earlier, where Inside Climate News did an analysis of the bills, this made the effective water rate for Camp Hill citizens 8 times higher than Dadeville residents.
Yeah.
And we have talked again and again about how much this town needs every penny that it's getting. And they're not only paying the water bill for the entirety of Dadeville, they're paying on top of that. And now we're going to get to the contract, because on top of all of this, every time they're behind, there are late fees. Curiously, there are no late fees detailed in the contract.
I'm sorry. Hold on. Wait.
Messiah's going to explain that. So I will tell you, like, upfront, and I think he's about to say this as well. Every time they're late, which is, I think, non-payment by the 15th of the month, they get charged 10% of the total bill.
Why are we saving them out when we don't have, you're charging us a 10% fee and we don't have 10% in our contract? That's something that they started doing, and this is rumors, so I don't know if it's true, but this is what I heard. Heard in 2017 when Miss Ezell Smith was wearing, they had a little spat or something. Again, I don't know if any of this is true, but said they just started charging it out of the blue then in 2017 because of some disagreement they have.
And we talked about that disagreement about that late water bill. At least when they, you know, I don't want to say when they first started, but one of them, we talked about that earlier.
But again, when you're doing this to the town, you're not doing this, and again, I'm not speaking on Miss Ezell. You're not doing this for Miss Ezell. You're doing this to hurt the citizens of Camp Hill. That's what you're doing it for. So again, why? And I'm glad we did not give them our water system, because why would you do that?
So to make sure that this point is underlined, looking at the bills, when Messiah's looking at these bills back to 2012, right, there isn't a late fee charged until 2017. 2017 is when they start charging that 10% late fee. So this hasn't been like a consistent thing from the beginning. And it appears, you know, he's speculating that this was done as a punitive measure against former Mayor Ezell. She's not bearing the brunt of that. The citizens are.
Yeah.
And then you want to come around and say we would be a better stewards of your water system after, you know, allegedly doing something that could only directly harm the citizens and the users of that water system.
It's all very exploitative, and it's not good.
No.
Let's keep this ball rolling.
This is our contract with Dadeville. So right here, Camp Hill agrees to pay the order of the board at the current rate of $2.35 per 1,000 gallons. And blah, 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 blah. This rate, this per 1,000 gallons may be adjusted by the board upward or downward in accordance with the cost of the water to the board as purchased from the city of Alexander City. Any adjustments so made shall and will apply to customers of Camp Hill. The board shall notify Camp Hill of the notice of charge within 30 days of notice from Camp Hill, from Alexander City. So if they have not gotten a notice from Alexander City that they are going up on their water bill since 2011, how can they be notifying us that they are increasing the contract?
So he is saying, it's not hypothetical, there has not been a single issuance from Alexander City to
Correct.
Dadeville
Correct.
since 2011?
Correct.
So for over a decade, they've been dialing up the price on Camp Hill.
Yes.
I believe that is in fact morally wrong, and I do hope that the justice system balances those books, because what the actual fuck?
It's pretty morally reprehensible. I think they're at $6.40 per 1,000 gallons, and Alexander City has stayed at
$1.50.
Yeah, $1.58, I think, per 1,000 gallons, selling to Dadeville. So their price has not changed in wholesale. And the agreed upon original contract price was $2.35 per 1,000 gallons. That's what Camp Hill would pay.
The issue isn't that they are selling to Camp Hill at a higher rate at all. The issue is the egregiousness to which that rate is higher, and the utter lack of contractual basis for those price hikes.
Exactly.
Is where the I'm sorry, what aspect comes from.
Absolutely. No, and I'm glad you asked clarifying questions because, like, again, there's a lot of numbers being thrown around here, and I want people to understand what we're talking about. So I've just backed it up a little bit.
How can they be notifying us that they are increasing the contract? And when we signed this in October of 2012, but yet they do it in 2014, 2017, 2020, 2021, and 2024. That makes no sense.
5 times.
And again, this is how you can know it's a contract that I wasn't here for. In 2012, think of who your mayor was. This right here is the late Samuel Ellis. The late Samuel Ellis was mayor in 2012. In 2012, I was in council middle school. So this ain't got nothing to do with Messiah. It ain't got nothing to do with this current council. But what it is that they have actually not followed the terms of the contract.
Messiah now has all of the exhibits from the lawsuit pulled up, and he's just scrolling through them. So he has put in what he's reading off of here is like the notices that the town received of these increased rates.
May 14, 2014, this is them giving notice that they are going up on our water bill. LA City ain't sent them nothing, but they sent them the raise increase. Rate increase from 2040 to 3040, June 2017. Again, right here, $3.40 to $4.40, $4.40 to $5.40, June 15, 2022.
Oliver gives that interview April 2022, or at least that's when that article comes out, right? And this rate hike happens right after.
July 12, 2024, $5.40 to $6.40. And again, I want y'all to take into account that 2011, I'm a 26-year-old man. I have graduated high school, college, law school. I'm a practicing attorney. I have a child on the way. I am married. In 2012, I was in council middle school, sitting in Miss Jennings' class, learning how to do algebra. That's how long ago it was since LA City increased their rate on them, but yet they feel that they had to raise it up on us. And I want y'all to ask why. I can't tell you why, because that would be an opinion of mine, and I don't want to really talk about opinions, but it makes no sense that they could do that because it does not honor what is in that original contract that you guys just saw that was signed by the late Samuel Ellis and whoever was in office at Dadeville at that time.
Do you remember we were talking about them being $64,000 behind on that like 2019 water bill, that whole cutting off on Monday, 17 grand due thing,
Yep.
right? They didn't actually use $64,000 worth of water. They used $52,000, and the rest of that were late fees that stacked up from multiple bills. And it turns out that in their contract with Dadeville, not only does it say that their rate should only increase if the rate from Alex City increases, but there is no mention of any late fees. There's nothing given about like you can charge late fees. So when you add up the overcharging and the years of late interest on bills that they were never shouldn't have been charged in the first place.
The rate should not have gone up on because the rate that Dadeville was paying didn't go up, and that was what their increase was contingent on.
And now when Dadeville says, you know, if the situation goes on in their letter, the one that went out on May 23rd, you know, the nuclear bomb, I called it, when they're saying that this continuance of, you know, not paying bills or whatever could bankrupt the Dadeville utility, I think what will actually bankrupt the Dadeville utility is having to hopefully, I am hoping that they get a judgment in their favor and they have to pay all that money back. Yeah. That might put a dent in Dadeville, but they've been stealing that money. I mean, I'm not accusing any specific person of having done that. I am not accusing the utility board. I am not accusing the mayor or you know, the city council of Dadeville. But when you look at this as a whole,
when you just look at the
been
situation,
stealing money from the residents of Camp Hill.
It's not a, you know, nice way of phrasing it, but what's been happening ain't nice. So here we are.
Yeah.
And when I got there from Alex City, what I did was I put it into a spreadsheet.
So to clarify what he's talking about, he sent a public records request to Alexander City and got the bills that they sent to Dadeville. So he has what Dadeville was getting billed. That's how he found out that Alex City had not increased their prices, and that's how we have the prices of what what Dadeville was charged. They're not just mathing this up, going, well, you're charging your citizens this rate and X number of gallons. He's getting the bills that Alexander City sent.
Mayor Messiah's got some receipts that he's going over.
Well, I mean, that's what happens
when
you're a lawyer. You know, you like to get the receipts for a lawsuit.
And I'm going to tell y'all now, I went to law school because I hate math.
I feel that.
I went to law school because I really didn't want to do with math. But one thing that as a lawyer that you know about math is that numbers tell their own story. If you sit there and just pay attention to numbers, they will tell their own stories.
So again, like a lot of the things that we're talking about, these are just numbers, and they are telling a pretty strong story.
Pretty strong, yeah.
Mm.
Fairly compelling.
So right here, Dadeville's highest bill they ever got from LA City was $47,000. All right.
So again, when Mayor Messiah Williams Cole is saying that Alexander City, the highest bill that Dadeville got was $47,000, that is including both Dadeville's and Camp Hill's water usage. So the two towns combined is $47,000, like upfront. That's what Dadeville is on the hook for, and now they have to get the portion from Camp Hill. However,
the highest balance we ever got was $68,000.
So again, it's all of the water that has come through Dadeville, and Dadeville is dispersing water to Camp Hill.
It also sounds like there might be some other communities and towns that, like, Dadeville is acting as kind of a hub for.
Possibly, but that isn't clearly the Walnut Hill bit is actually Walnut Hill has its own water supply, and that Camp Hill had a backup line to them, which they no longer have. And so Dadeville was arguing that Camp Hill was using more because they no longer had Walnut Hill as a backup. And Williams Cole responded with, "We never used that backup because that line is full of holes. We would just be throwing, like, good money after bad. And besides, we only have a contract with them for an emergency of like 2 or 3 million gallons. It does not explain a doubling, not just a doubling of the usage, but a quadrupling of the price."
Yeah, no, this whole situation is fucked.
Yeah. So again, right? So when we talk about Camp Hill's bill, they're only talking about their portion of the bill. When we talk about Dadeville's bills, that their highest bill was $47,000, that is including everything also sent along to Camp Hill. $68,000 was the highest bill that Camp Hill ever paid. If $47,000 is the highest that Dadeville ever paid, and that is combined the bills of Dadeville and Camp Hill, and yet Camp Hill, for just their municipality,
$21,000.
That's the lowest that Camp Hill ever paid. Yeah. But
No,
67.
the difference between
yes. Sorry, I forget that you can do math in your head because I cannot. I forget that you're a mathy girl.
But yeah, the over $20,000 of essentially of Camp Hill essentially subsidizing Dadeville's water.
Yeah.
And if anything, that situation feels like it ought to be reversed in this. It's
fucky.
It's wrong.
It's fucky.
It's wrong mathematically. It's wrong morally. It's wrong contractually. It's just wrong.
Yeah.
But I want y'all to see just how if you go through their bill always stays about the same. Yet Camp Hill's bill goes up starting in 2020 of May. Every year they increase to the point where a normal bill where we're actually using about $6 million is at $39,000. So we're paying $39,000 for what we paid in 2020, which was again too high, but was still $15,000. How do you expect us to pay $67 million when you are being charged $36,000? When we were getting charged back then, we were being charged $15,000. They were getting $35,000. We were being charged $17,000. They were being charged $30,000, $15,000, $30,000. How did you see that increase unless you are trying to do something to our system that is basically making us have to do things where we can't invest in our system? How do we pay a bill? And I'll tell y'all, in any month in Camp Hill, we bring anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 in water charging people. If we only making $40,000 at most, how are we expected to pay $60,000 in water bill? And even if you charge us $39,000 at our average, we only got 20 right here. It will only be about $20 to put back in our system. How do you expect us to invest in our system when you are not allowing us money to be invested in our system?
So again, right? ADEM, the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, I think that's right.
You're correct.
The ones who have the disbursement ability, the grant approval ability, right? They don't want to give Camp Hill directly the $10 million grant because Camp Hill does not have a history of investing in their own system. The last time Camp Hill invested in their system, it was like the 90s with those bonds that were past due, that 1.5 million, right, that they were dealing with in the early aughts or late aughts. Yeah, they don't have a history of investing in their system because based on what they're able to come in from their constituents, and remember, their constituents are paying very high water bills,
They are.
right? Earlier we talked about
Like $385
a
a
month, right,
Eh,
to try to cover these bills. There is nothing in the tank to invest in this. Then their water systems get worse and they have less money to invest. And then on top of this, right, they're upping the rates and upping the rates and upping the rates. There is no way out of this because this is just fundamentally inequitable. Like it's a rigged game.
They're in like the economic version of a hydraulic press, just with all the money just getting squeezed out of them and not any way to, with no recourse.
Right.
Well, I guess they are undergoing recourse with this lawsuit.
So yeah, it's not equitable. It's just not equitable.
The biggest mistake in my career was that when Dadeville raised the water rates on us. So when I got a letter in 2021, 2022, and 2024, the biggest mistake I have made as mayor is I did not contact Alexander City to see where they had raised the bill. That's the biggest mistake I've ever made. And I'll be the first to admit. And it's one of those things when you sit there and you go back and you like, and this may excuse my language, I'm like, damn, all these years where we're struggling, trying to do this, trying to take it there, and we actually, as you can see in here, I want y'all to see where in these months, like 4 million, we had such good water rates in these months where we cut down and cut back. That should have cost us $10,000, not $26,000. And I want y'all to know where we were doing such a great job. And when I say we, it's not me, it's not the council, it's where Kawana, the utility department, were busting their, excuse my language, but I think it needs to be said, they were busting their ass getting water leaks fixed, making sure stuff was down, doing the best damn job they could. And still, we are still seeing our water bills rise and rise and rise and rise and rise.
I understand like why he would feel that way. I don't think that's fair. You shouldn't have to pour over the contract for your utilities every time you're getting a
You
rate thing to
shouldn't.
not get exploited. But I understand, as somebody who also blames themselves when things go wrong because it's like a form of, like control that you have. And granted, I am not the mayor of a town, but I think I don't think this is his fault.
No, because the problem wasn't that he didn't verify with the other town. The problem was that he was being lied to.
Yeah.
And being directly exploited by effectively his neighbors.
And being told over and over again that your rates are going up and your water usage is going up because of leaks. And so having these people who are not getting paid more, right, to bust their asses to fix these leaks, to chase after this mythical idea that like their bills could come down again when all they were ever going to do was go up.
Yeah.
Because of these rate increases. Like that is also another level of like, wow, that wasn't our fault at all. Like, I mean, granted, you should always fix water leaks because it's just better. So this is the very last clip, and I don't remember what what was in this one.
I hate that it took me this long to find out. I mean, I got 5 more months in the office, and I found this out maybe a month and a half ago. And it's eating me up. Well, it's not eating me up anymore because we're addressing it. But man, for the past since May of 2014, we have been paying too much, and that money adds up over the years. It adds up over the months and stuff like that, man. When I just think about it, it makes me mad.
So since 2014, Camp Hill has been paying too much for water. And the gulf between what they should have been paying and what they actually paid has gotten wider and wider over the years. That is a decade of overcharging. At least 5, maybe 8 years of 10% late fees on bills that shouldn't have been that price to begin with. When you step back, and again, this is why these episodes were so long. This is why I said I wrote like a mini thesis with this, is because I really wanted to talk about this water crisis in context with everything else that Camp Hill has gone through, so that when we are talking about this exploitation, to understand that this is a straight line. To me, this is almost like a modern day sharecropping, right? It's a system where you are leasing or you're borrowing against yourself, right? They're
You're
getting
borrowing
the
against yourself
water.
for something you need.
You're
For
getting the
something
water, right?
That's
And then
an
the bill comes,
inelastic cost.
and the bill comes later, and the bill keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and you're having to scrape and scrounge more and more, and then you're getting further and further into debt. And there's just something I mean, I don't know that it's an appropriate parallel because, this isn't something that's being enforced with guns, right? There's nobody showing up by force or locking folks up, but this is like a slow death of a town. And it feels, the mechanisms just feel too similar to me not to bring up that parallel.
I mean, it's like you said, sharecropping. It's like a company store. It's an economic model that is parasitic in
Right.
nature.
But sharecropping specifically, because that is the history of Camp Hill,
Yes.
right? Is the sharecroppers, and is Dadeville enacting violence on those sharecroppers who just want to be able to feed their families.
Right.
The thing that is most common that women communist sharecroppers or the sharecroppers union organizers would talk about, their women, is they wanted to be able to feed and clothe their family. That
Yeah.
was their radicalization, was there's no perfect way I could do this and reach that goal. So I know that is kind of like a heavy thing. So I want to end this on a more positive note. I wanted to end this episode, or the series, really, with talking about the future of Camp Hill, especially talking about the federal cuts that have now affected Camp Hill. But the water stuff has been so much that I'm going to push off the federal cuts to future episodes on Camp Hill, which I actually, in retrospect, think is better, because instead of just talking about these facts and numbers, we can talk directly to the folks impacted and hear from them. So instead, because we are going to end on a high step, like you coined the phrase last time, we're going to end on a high step, and we're going to talk about the story of Rufus Vines. Rufus is an incredible cook. He's a recovering alcoholic, and he is now Volunteer of the Year. I am paraphrasing the following from a wonderful article written by Abigail Murphy at the Alexander City Outlook, as well as some of my own personal knowledge and experience with Rufus. So, Rufus was just starting out his sobriety at the 2-week mark when he first met my friend Warren Tidwell. Warren is the executive director of Across, a rural resiliency nonprofit that is based in Camp Hill. Rufus learned to cook from his great-grandmother Mary, and he asked Warren if he could cook for the storm recovery volunteers. And I'm so glad he did, because having had his cooking, oh boy, I am a fat man, and I would be so much bigger if I could eat good at Rufus's every day. Rufus did not just make that one meal. He made 7,000 meals over the next year. He's been sober for the past 11 months at the time that this article was written. He is, I believe, 65 years of age. So he's older, and he has been turning his life around. Throughout Vine's months of sobriety, he has put in more than 2,800 hours of volunteer work throughout the storm recovery process. And it wasn't all through cooking meals. He helped with cleanup days and aided with organizing events. He also stayed overnight at the center when a caretaker was needed on site. Quote, "There's 2 things you can't possess doing this type of work," Vine said. "You can't be selfish, and you cannot hold personal vendettas, because it will come back to haunt you." And to bring this back to faith, Vine said he told himself ever since he first went to prison, while the physical body can be locked up, the mind cannot. And so he has worked to lead with his faith in God and learn more about the world around him, with degrees in horticulture, welding, and small engine repairs. "I have been a problem," Vine said. "I know I can't come in and fix the whole of Camp Hill by myself, but I want to factor into that solution, helping Camp Hill to get better. Whether I'm here physically or in spirit, I want to be part of the solution." And that, to me, that is the future of Camp Hill. It is people whose faith and caring for each other and for their community has kept this community together over unspeakable horrors. Camp Hill is not going anywhere anytime soon. It's a wonderful town. They absolutely need help, and they need a fair shake. But these people, they're the heroes they've been waiting for. I'm very excited to see where Camp Hill goes in the future, because I think Camp Hill 10 years from now is going to be very different than it is now. And my deepest hope for them is that future is dictated and controlled by the people of Camp Hill, and not any outside source, whether that's including myself. So, that is my mini thesis on Camp Hill. We, like I said,
Ain't no many about it.
yeah. 19,000 words, I think. 19,000 words, I think, at the end. I hope that was, I hope that did some small amount of justice to Camp Hill. I've been very nervous about this episode. There's so much depth and complexity here, and I have been continually afraid of flattening people or making caricatures out of these stories. So I hope when the people of Camp Hill listen to this, that I hope that they feel seen and heard, and that I will be turning the mic over to you in the future, so you can let me know exactly how you feel about things. So with that, we're going to sign off, and there's a lot of really exciting episodes coming up. I'm actually traveling up to Huntsville this weekend, covering Marjorie Taylor Queens. We've got some really cool stuff coming out, so stay tuned, y'all. Thank you so much for another episode.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
You are unfortunately going to be memorialized in history.
There are people. They're Alabamians.
There's a whole bunch of folks in the state of Alabama that are counting on us.
And we don't have a plan.
And they deserve better than what we are offering them right now.
We don't sleep at night because we already know what's going to happen.
The math ain't math.
But you have shown us time after time after time that's not what you all intend to do.